Welcome back to 1010's podcast. I am, of course, Michael Beck with Adam and Rob Dietrich.
What's it?
Rob Dickulus.
Rob Dickulus?
Oh, God.
Hi, Rob Dickulus. And we have guests today. We are here with the Iowa State University Baja team. We've got Derick Whited. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Ryan Werner.
Yep.
And Andy... Oh, shit. Raudabaugh?
Yes, that's correct.
Raudabaugh? Is that right?
Raudabaugh.
Raudabaugh, okay. Is there a T on the end?
No.
One day I'll get somebody's name right.
I don't believe it.
Nope.
But, so anyway, thanks for having us, guys. For some reason, they let Robbie and I drive their Baja car, which is complete insanity, but nobody ran into anything or hit that dumpster or the skidster, but I did get spotted by a cop, but he didn't stop me.
It gave you a funny look.
We might have to double back because we were wondering, can you get air out of that loading ramp that's over there?
Oh, yeah.
Can you start at the bottom of that and
Actually-
get air with it?
So we did a little bit of tire pressure testing and just basically trying to figure out the spring rate of our tires, and that was one thing we did is we just launched it over and over with high-speed cameras. We just launched it off the ramp.
After the podcast.
Did you launch it out of that actual ramp?
Yeah, we would back it up, lift it up, and just take off as fast as we could.
It's like one of those old delivery ramps. You usually see them on older buildings, not so much anymore, but basically you could back a truck down it, and you can deliver to a large garage door or whatever. But I was looking at it. I didn't know if you could get enough speed coming out of that.
Yeah, it's a pretty short runway.
To get all four wheels off the ground, but apparently you can. That's pretty sweet.
It's quite torquey, so...
Yeah, it's when it took off, it's got basically a CVT transmission, so as soon as you give it enough throttle, it wants to go. But so who wants to tell us a little bit about your car? So the car we looked at today, that's the 2016, what would you call that? Competition year 2016 car?
Yeah, so that covers the 2015-2016 academic year.
Okay.
So our season begins around June. They don't release the new rules until August, but it begins around June, and our actual competitions that we go to are mid-April, late May, and early June, typically.
Okay, so you guys have 3 competitions for the year then?
Yep. Yeah, at least in the U.S. So Baja is an international. It's an international series. So the U.S. series is not the only one. There's competitions in South Africa, South Korea, China, Brazil, India. India's a big one. So we could technically go to those as well, but in the U.S. there's 3 of them.
And where are they located?
This year it was in Gorman, California, Cookeville, Tennessee, and Rochester, New York.
Okay.
That's roaming, then, you guys were saying earlier? That they're not always in those same places?
No, they rotate. There's quite a few rotations. It's usually like a 3 or 4 year rotation between tracks.
So before we get into what that actual competition is, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about the car that you guys built, and kind of what parameters Baja sets for you when you because you guys, I assume, just like Formula, build a car every year, right? Mm-hmm. So talk about the car you guys built this year and what parameters you guys have to work within.
So I guess we're given not actually a huge rule list. So, well, it's moderately large. A lot of the regulations that they give us are about the frame. A lot of it's just safety concerns and to make sure we don't end up hurting ourselves when we're running 100 abreast on the tracks.
100 miles an hour?
No.
Oh, 100
Wide.
abreast. Oh, okay.
Wide. Like a cross-country start or something.
Oh, God.
Well, yeah, so they're, I guess each race is about 2 miles long for 4 hours, and there's 100 cars going, so it needs to be pretty tough and pretty safe. So
That's kind of terrifying.
So yeah, so a lot of the rules are about frame, and then that we can't change out components once we've gone through tech inspection and such. Same as any other type of race.
Sure.
Yeah, basic rules: 4 tires, not in a straight line, and you have to have some form of suspension.
Okay.
That's kind of where the basic concept comes from. They throw some other ones. You can't have like handlebar steering and stuff like that. So that's why everybody's car kind of ends up looking the same or extremely similar. But yeah, there's frame rules and everything for safety, but there aren't really a whole lot of other rules concerning design.
Yeah, it really just concerns the space where the driver occupies, pretty much.
Sure.
I mean,
And then the engine that's a spec engine,
Yeah,
right? I
we
mean, you
can't
have to
touch
use
it.
Okay. And what's that?
it's a Briggs & Stratton Intech 305, so pretty small engine, single cylinder, 10 horsepower, and 14.2.
14.5 foot-pounds of torque
Yeah.
is what the rating is. So every team will usually you contact Briggs & Stratton, and they ship you a cardboard box with the completely assembled engine in the box, foam packed and everything. You pull it out of the box, you mount it in your car, you fuel it, and you run it. That's it.
So you can't open it then, I imagine.
no.
It's got to stay closed. Okay.
Yep. So basically, they do a post-race inspection if you're one of the top 5 teams. Basically, what they say is all parts have to be OEM Briggs & Stratton parts. They have to have all the serial numbers and everything on them. But they will take your engine and they will inspect it. They'll check for tooling marks and stuff like that. Make sure you didn't go through and polish it and whatnot.
Sure.
So it's pretty strict on the motor part. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, make it faster, make it faster." Well, we can't.
Can't. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So does Briggs & Stratton give you that transmission too, or where does that come from?
No.
We can select everything but the engine. So
Okay.
our CVT comes from gauged CVTs. They're from Nebraska, aren't they?
No.
No. Okay. Somebody told me that they were from Nebraska, and I was
No, I think
really
they're up
questioning
north
that.
somewhere.
Yeah, but anyway, they're really big in Baja. A lot of people buy gauge CVTs, either that or CV Tech. Really, there are quite a few teams that run manual transmissions too, but
Really?
There's a lot more risk involved.
Yeah, I would imagine. So it's an actual. Is that a? It's not a clutchless manual then. I would imagine you actually have to clutch that, or
Yeah, a lot of teams have a clutch.
Well, I guess why a lot of teams run manual transmissions is due to, I guess, their skill levels or knowledge. Luckily, we've had a lot of advanced members, and we've done a lot of research, and we get to build our own transmission. A lot of teams won't. They'll pull them out of ATVs, four-wheelers, side-by-sides, Harleys, pretty much anything everywhere and in between. But we've been pretty successful with our double reduction gearbox that we built for the last 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah, that gearbox is in its 7th iteration,
Yep.
or at least the case is.
okay. So are you guys designing it and then sending it to them, and then they're actually manufacturing it, or how does that work?
No, we manufacture the gear case itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have part of our drivetrain team. They'll go through. We know kind of from the dyno information what our engine's putting out, and then they figure out kind of what the CVT's doing a little bit, and then they'll do all the calcs for the gears, sizes, what kind of ratio you want, how wide the gears need to be, and then once they figure that out, we'll actually manufacture all the gear blanks and the cases and the input shafts and everything for it. The only thing we don't do is actually cut the teeth on the gear.
Oh, okay.
We just don't have the machining capability here, so we send that out, and then we have them send it to be heat treated.
Okay.
So
That
it's-
makes sense.
So the CVT itself is a manufactured CVT that we buy, but the gear case and everything else in the drivetrain those are things that we manufacture ourselves.
Gotcha. So what's the difference between last year's car and this year's car? I mean, obviously, part of the program is rebuilding this car every single year, and hopefully you're taking your iteration from last year and improving on it, taking your notes from your races, and then making changes so that it's better for this year. What'd you guys change for
So the most
2016?
dramatic change would definitely be weight. I think we dropped 60 pounds out of the car.
What's the car weight total?
330 or 340.
Okay, so it doesn't
depends
weigh-
upon the amount of mud that's on it.
It doesn't weigh much at all then. So to drop 60 pounds is, that's a huge amount.
That's significant. Was
Yeah.
that mostly in like a more efficient cage design, or how do you drop that kind of weight?
Yeah, everywhere. Pretty much every subsystem, or we divide our car up into subsystems for design purposes. So pretty much every subsystem reduced or dropped some sort of weight. I know the frame dropped 10 pounds. So originally was 60, 61 pounds, and now it's down to 51.
And I think both of the suspensions lost about 35% of their weight as well.
Yeah.
A lot of it's just maintaining knowledge, and a lot of us were younger students last year, and we've learned a lot, and we're able to fine-tune our designs from the previous year and really, build a little bit lighter of a car and just step by step going through and seeing, oh, hey, we don't need weight here. And a lot of it's testing as well, seeing what fails and what we need to replace and what we don't.
Yeah, a lot of the systems on the 2014-2015 car, it's really obvious that a bunch of sophomores in engineering designed them. So then this past year's car, it's definitely a step up in terms of performance, and it's more the people who designed it matured and understood what happened last year.
Sure. Where's that suspension come from for that car?
Yeah, so it's pretty much custom. For the previous year, Maltec ATV out of Illinois, I can't remember what city, we had a member that worked there, and they built our shocks for us and gave us some recommendations on tuning, and we went through. We really liked the performance from them. So this year, that member was still with us, and he actually kind of gave us the prints, and we built the shocks ourselves. And we bought the valving system for it, but otherwise we built 99% of the shock, and we were able to tune it a lot more than we did the previous year, which I think really helped us. As you saw, we were leaning over pretty well in the corners and not rolling.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you guys are, like, when we were driving it, you guys are smashing into curbs, and that car didn't seem to care that much. I mean, I know they're just a few inches. It's probably not a huge hurdle, but it soaks it up pretty well.
Yeah, and most of our races, they'll throw boulders the size of minivans or trees 6-8 inches in diameter, and they expect us to soak that stuff up, and you just got to build as soft a suspension as you can while also maintaining a little bit of hardness for the corners when you're going 35 miles an hour down a hill.
Yeah, the rears had dual rates on them, correct?
Both the front and
all
the rear.
The fronts did too. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, but the travel on the rear is quite a bit longer than on the front, right?
Actually, so a little bit of a design change from the previous year. We ran a 2-to-1 leverage ratio last year, and this year, to help kind of reduce weight and components, we ran a 1.8 or 1.18 to 1, which really allowed our component weight to decrease just due to the lower leverage ratio. And that really, I think, softened up our suspension as well. The front maintained a 2-to-1 leverage ratio, and they both have 12 inches of suspension travel.
So it's equal throughout the whole car then? It's 12 inches?
It's pretty close,
Pretty close to the same? Okay.
I guess just looking at them, the backs are quite a bit taller. I guess we just assumed that meant that they had more travel.
No, that's just due to the leverage ratio. You get more, I guess, with a higher leverage ratio, you have more shock travel per inch of wheel travel and such.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing, when I was driving the car, that when I got stuck at that stop sign and there were cars coming, and I just drove over the curb. Psychologically, it's weird to just... Well, first of all, I'm used to riding in a go-kart, which had basically fixed suspension on it.
No suspension.
So looking at the curb, I'm like, do I really want to drive over that? I don't think I want to drive over that. And I sat there for a little while longer. I'm like, I'm not going to wait for these cars. So I drove over it, and, I mean, it's smooth as glass. It's pretty amazing how that'll soak that up. And I'm sure that dual rate, I don't think I've ever driven anything that actually has real dual rate on it, except for maybe one of my buddies' STIs has dual rates on it. But
that's probably not something you're going to notice in a heavy car like that.
No, probably not. But it's amazing you can run over stuff pretty easily, not feel it. But then when you really get to leaning on it, because we were doing pretty tight radius circles in the parking lot, there's only so far it's going to go before that second rate starts to compensate a little bit, and obviously it doesn't fall on its side. So it's pretty cool. It's a cool design.
Sounds like something I need in my race car.
There were a few teams that ran triple rate shocks.
That just sounds unnecessarily complicated.
For the most part, it is.
Yeah. It looks cool.
Yeah,
it really does
it,
look
it,
cool.
it looks real cool because you get different colors for your different springs, and it looks like a rainbow, and it's just some pretty cool stuff. But hitting curves and stuff like that. Actually, a lot of that is your tires. A lot of people
you
don't
guys
really
did have quite a bit of sidewall. I mean, they were.
Oh yeah, they're real tall, and the tires that you guys were running on were only at about maybe 4 psi.
What's normal?
Depends on the event. I mean, we kind of
Okay.
change around our tire pressure and stuff like that depending on what we're doing. If we're doing stuff where we're going to see a lot of real hard impacts, our rock crawl in Oregon last year, I think we ran 13 to 14 psi, maybe a little more, which noticeably stiffens those up quite a bit. But on sharp impacts on stuff like curbs, dropping them down real low, the tires just deflect and sponge it up real quick.
Now, are these spec tires or like Formula, or do you guys kind of pick your tires?
You can pick whatever you can fit on your rims.
Now, are the rims spec?
No, they are not.
If you look at pictures of Baja cars, every single Baja car is going to have a different tire and rim setup. It's not
Okay.
There's no right or wrong decision, really. I mean, it's just what you find works the best with your car.
75% of the whole field runs. They run mud lights. They run some form of the Maxxis Razor, or you see Bear Claws quite a bit now. And then you'll see some oddballs and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. Mud lights, Bear Claws, and Razors.
Yeah.
And the hole shots. There's quite a few hole shots.
And it's just interesting to see Baja cars with small wheel diameters because they look really dinky.
Yeah.
With normal sized wheels and tires on them, but like Wisconsin's car, theirs looks a little interesting. But
Yeah, I kind of figured you guys would use a lot of like four-wheeler parts, stuff like that. It would make sense to be using that type of stuff. So going to a Razor, seems logical.
I bet that's way cheaper than the Formula's tires. Because what did they say they spent on tires?
I don't know, but they're a Hoosier, and we know what those cost. I mean, the set of Hoosiers I have sitting at
They're
home are
they spent
$1,400 tires.
I'd say $1,400 on tires this year.
Yeah, it's about
Sorry,
the same as an autocross car.
I signed the check, so I
You can disclose whatever you want to.
yeah. I think that's what they spent on it.
Was
I'd
that
have
for
to check
a
with them.
set?
No, I think that was for 2. I'm not 100%
Man, I
sure.
need that student discount.
That's it's still expensive though, because
not
what
cheap.
size is that? A wheel? It's like a 10-inch wheel. It's tiny.
Yeah, they're
It
tiny.
was like a 10 by 10.
Yeah, so small. It's crazy. So I'm sure your guys' tires are a lot more affordable than that, especially if you can use whatever you want. I mean, that's part of the game, right? Is picking components that are going to fit within your budget. So
Yeah, and one of the things that we did is actually we moved from a Maxxis Razor to a GBC knockoff, basically. Exact same tread pattern, same sizes, sidewall characteristics, and whatnot. It's just cheap. So you can get whatever you can get. If you can find it real cheap from somebody no name somewhere out of China, they really don't care. You just got to spec it out for the same price, whatever the MSRP is on it.
And also, surprisingly, tires add a lot of weight. So the Bear Claws are 4 pounds heavier per tire than the ones that we have on the rear end of the car now.
4 pounds a piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's a lot on a car that only weighs 400 pounds or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference.
So with your tires, do you guys have to rotate them out before they're bare or bald? Do they have like heat cycles and stuff like that, or is that not a concern with an off-road tire?
Heat cycles really aren't that big a concern. Biggest thing is just wear and losing tread. Actually, most of our competitions and testing and stuff that we do doesn't wear our tires real bad. The things
With a car that light.
the thing that really tears those tires up is doing donuts in the parking lot.
I believe that.
Yeah, but it's so much fun.
Oh, it is.
It is.
It's for testing purposes,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
In air quotes.
We'll leave the set that we had on for last competition season. We'll leave it on for testing, and we'll buy 1 to 2 new sets for competition. Usually we don't switch them out because they just go bald or wear out. We usually have to switch them out for flats or anything like that.
Yeah, poking holes from trees and sharp rocks and stuff like that.
So as far as your guys' budget, I assume it's probably similar to Formula. It's kind of minimally funded by the university. So you guys really rely on donors and sponsorship from companies, which I'm sure help you with a lot of manufacturing and things. But, what are your big expenditures for the year?
Definitely the biggest single item is the CVT. That's about $2,500 for the entire
Really?
kit. Yep. The next biggest purchase would be all of our tubing. So we have our frame and most of our suspension tubes CNC cut and bent at VR3 Engineering in Ontario, I think. Quebec, I forget. But we order it from them, and that's about $3,300.
So they just send you the tubing then, I imagine.
Yeah,
and
so
you guys,
we model it up
Yep.
to make the models in their specs, send it to them, get a quote for it, and then they get it done and shipped back to us in 2.5 weeks
Yeah.
from the time we order it.
Big
That's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah,
big
it
plug
is.
for VR3, but they do. I think they originally specialized in aircraft frames. Tubular aircraft frames is what they started with. But their whole business and engineering service or whatever is, they'll take anything from, or they claim they'll take anything from a full SolidWorks model and all that down to like a sketch on a napkin. And they got guys that'll figure it out, and then they'll do all they'll cope it. They'll cope it all. They'll CNC bend it all, and they'll even weld it for you if you want them to.
Is it chromoly?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. So they do most of their work in chromoly. I think that comes from the aircraft frames, but it's a lot per pound. It's a lot stronger than 1020, which is what we used to use. So
Sure, absolutely.
Significantly lighter too. I used to do junior drag racing stuff, and I had a mild steel car. My chromoly car was a lot lighter.
Kind of.
yeah,
If you take a bar of steel and you set it right next to a bar of chromoly, they'll weigh the exact same.
Well, I suppose you could probably use less and still end up with the same strength.
Exactly. So chromoly is supposed to be 30% stronger for how much it weighs. So the whole point with us moving towards chromoly is, since it's a lot stronger, we can use way less. And using way less makes it a lot lighter because there's not as much tube, makes it easier to manufacture because you don't have to weld as much and all that.
What are the body panels on the car? Are they just aluminum or?
yeah. That's 22 gauge aluminum.
Okay.
So we just got sheets of it. Had it laser cut or water jet? Yeah, we had it laser cut, and then the guy who designed the body went in and finished up the bending and all of that. So
The nice part is Quality Manufacturing in Urbandale, they do a lot of our sheet metal parts.
Yeah.
A lot of it, we don't have, I guess, the adequate facilities to be doing a lot of sheet metal parts really accurately. I mean, you can only do so much with a vise and a hammer.
Right. You guys
tin
don't.
snips.
You guys don't have a brake here. You don't have a. You do have a sheet metal brake.
but I mean, not a computer controlled.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
you're sending them CAD models in. You're not sketching this out.
Quality Manufacturing does a lot for clubs at Iowa State, and I think other universities too. But they donate all of the material and manufacturing, so we get all of our sheet metal that we order from them for free. And we totaled it up, and it's like $7,500 worth of sheet metal.
Really?
Wow.
If not more.
Yeah, we go from a couple of years ago, we were bending all of our sheet metal by hand and cutting it out with tin snips. And last year, our fuel tank box, which is just the enclosure that we have around our plastic fuel tank, we set the model down there. They cut it on a CO2 laser out of 22 gauge aluminum. They bent it on their CNC brake press, and then they had a tag on it when we received it that just for fun, they went through and they CMM'd it, which for the one engineer that's actually sitting over there might be able to explain what that is.
See, I only know CMMs as the inspection gauge.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
That and components maintenance manuals.
Yep.
So
Yeah, but they actually CMM'd it, which is just a way of super accurately gauging how all the bends and everything came out, which their tolerance card said that the cuts and the bends came down to less than 0.005 of an inch.
Which is
on our fuel tank box that, honestly, if it was within a half inch, we didn't care.
Yeah, they do a very good job, and they're very particular about the stuff that they send back. They send back a lot of duds to be remanufactured. So I mean, if they mess up even a little bit, even if it's inside what we think that we want,
inside of your tolerance.
yeah, they redo it.
We'll send it back.
They're
A lot of double checks and triple checks for them.
yeah, yeah. We got our firewall back last year, and they actually went in with permanent marker and circled dents in the sheet metal that you can't even see. Yeah, pin-sized dents. They circled them.
So which component of the car is for them is the most expensive or the biggest? Is it the driver's compartment? Is that because $7,500 worth of aluminum is not a small number? So I'm just trying to figure out what are they spending most of their time on, or what's the biggest piece?
I guess it's just the volume that we do.
We get a lot of spares too. So I mean,
spare body
I was
panels.
going to say.
Our current car has 3 sets of body panels complete.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of extra material that goes into that. But we tend to give them odd stuff. I mean, it's not.
A lot of the cost, I mean, with any race car, it's one-off parts, right? You look at our car, we've got this one particular firewall. It's different from the hood panel, different from this side panel to this side panel to the skid plate. And so all their cost really comes in trying to set up all their benders and stuff to make the bend accurately. It doesn't cost anything to make extras because, you slap it down on a laser, you make a bunch of blanks, and then once you have the bender set up for one part, you just do them all, and it's not hard. But usually in manufacturing, it takes way longer to try and set up for a part than it is to actually do that bend on anything or do that cope or whatever it may be.
The coolest part that they made for us this year was the fuel tank box. How many bends does it have in it? It's a 360 degrees, so the two ends of it connect back to each other, but it has like 15 bends.
I think it's around 12.
12? Okay.
But there's like 3 different radiuses of bends, so it's not just the same die. They're switching out dies. They're doing some this way and some that way.
Holy cow.
So it was all out of one piece?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting part, and it's amazing that they can even make something like that.
Sure, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the competition. How's that work? It sounds like there's different types. Run through your year. How's it work?
So, obviously, there's 3 U.S. competitions that we go to. What? Stout. Oh, yeah, and Stout. So in the fall, there's a lot of unofficial, non-SAE sanctioned competitions that are regional. So we usually go to 2 of them. One is Stout, which is near Menominee, Wisconsin. And then the other one is Midnight Mayhem down in Kentucky.
And the nice part about those competitions is very laid back. It's just a bunch of, the hosting college. They'll set up a little track for us. They'll bring probably 10 or 15 schools usually come just from around the Midwest. And we can really, test parts that we want to, experimental parts that we want to test. We can throw them on the car, put a younger driver in, or that's where we get to, put all of our members in and make sure that they have driving time, because unlike some of the other teams at our school, we get to have all of our members drive. That's one thing we really pride ourselves on.
I think that's awesome that you guys are able to do that. That makes it. I would think that makes it a lot easier to put the time in when you actually know you're going to get to enjoy it.
Well, and it's not so much that, but just seeing what you helped design and being able to actually physically drive it and perform really well in it, it's definitely a reward.
Well, not only that, it'd be nice to see, if you designed a certain component, it'd be nice to see how it actually reacted. Because it's one thing for somebody to tell you, or maybe they wouldn't tell you. Maybe you wouldn't necessarily get feedback on something you specifically designed, but it'd be nice to know with your butt in the seat and say, okay, this is what happened. Here's maybe what I would change for next year, and actually have that feedback directly as opposed to getting it from somebody else.
Definitely. And I've designed the frame for the Baja car the last 2 years, and the previous year's car has been rolled more than 10 times, which is that's really rare. That usually doesn't happen. And it's also been in a head-on collision with the University of Iowa's Baja car.
I'm sure that wasn't.
None of that was on purpose.
No, it was not on purpose. It was a pretty interesting moment, but it's nice to see what you designed hold up to stuff like that, and then go back and see what could you have done better.
Sure.
Just from those failures.
And that's the whole glory of the student design competition, is that whole concept.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing. Really, it's not a bad thing to fail. It sucks right away, but then it's a good learning experience.
Right, you learn from it and you move on for the next year. So what's after that that first event?
So at the non-sanctioned events, it's usually just a 4-hour race, and they have food and whatnot.
Is all that? Is it dirt? Is it rock? I mean, what's the? Or does it depend on what the
both Midnight
Mayhem
and Stout are on MX tracks?
Yeah, they're based on motocross tracks.
Yeah.
Usually
awesome.
they don't. Yeah, they don't usually do a whole lot. We just ended up at a new track last year at Stout. We used to race in a farmer's kind of backyard kind of deal on a little track that he kind of built. And down the hill, there's actually a big MX course, and everybody knew about it because you drive right by it. And every year they said, "Man, what does it take to get down there? Like, let's just drive over there and just start racing over there." Well,
What are they going to do?
yeah,
There's
yeah.
like-
What are they going to do? They're going to stop us all?
There's like 200 of us here.
Yeah.
Try
No,
and
but
stop us.
finally last year, they got the approval, and we rolled up and we started racing on that track. And they'll dig in telephone poles and stuff like that. They'll lay those down. You'll hit those. They don't really take the time to do a bunch of rocks or anything like that. So you'll see a lot of telephone poles, and they'll bring out as much as they can for water. Bring out water trucks, set up fire hoses, whatever. So
It sounds like a muddy, messy time.
well, so that being said, last year at Midnight Mayhem down in Kentucky, it had rained for about 3 days before the endurance race. So everybody goes down there, and people were getting their truck and trailers stuck down trying to get parked and whatnot. And the day of the race came, or actually the night of the race came, because the reason why they call it Midnight Mayhem is we race from 8 p.m. to midnight. They set up some lights and stuff, and part of the competition is you got to set up lights on your Baja car. And some teams go real hard and get the LED light bars. Some of them just duct tape flashlights to the roll hoops, or
We got the flashing LED strips, the little
like the little strip
color-changing
lights.
LEDs, and
Yeah.
set to the strobe setting for a little while.
it was all changing lights and stuff. But last year they had so much rain, and down there it's kind of a clay, red dirt kind of base track. They got everybody lined up to start. And there was a small hill, or what we'd consider a small hill. So it was probably about a 6 foot up onto a tabletop, probably 30 degrees. And everybody kind of pushed their car out there to get started. They started the race. 6 teams made it up the hill to the start line, and everybody else got stuck. Yeah, well, there were probably about 80 teams there. So 6 made it, everybody else got stuck. And they said, at first they're just like, just push them up there and get them going. And so they made a couple laps, and it was real muddy. A lot of people were getting stuck in a lot of different places. And this was just on the main course. So what they do is they have you divert off, and you kind of go through some backwoods country, which was way worse than the track was. So before anybody ever got there, they shut it down for I think it was about 20 to 25 minutes. And they closed off that whole back section, so we were just racing on the MX track. And they tried to run it for about another hour, and they shut it down again. And they brought out, I think they had a tractor with a loader on the front, and they got the tractor stuck. So they brought out a bulldozer, and they had the bulldozer sit there, and I think they scraped about 10 inches to 12 inches of mud off the top of the track in some of the real, real bad spots. And then they started running again, but they said at this point it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. We had maybe 30 minutes of racing in. They said, "All right, if you ever get stuck, you got to get off the track. We can't.
You're done.
Yeah, we just can't have everybody up here getting stuck on a hill, and people who probably could get up it had to stop and wait for you to clear,
And then they're stuck.
Yeah, and then they're stuck, and you got to get workers out there and all that. So, it was a one and done kind of deal." So they kind of cleared some people off, and then they got down, and there was maybe 16, 18 cars that were running there towards the end, and they ran for only about another 2 hours, and they just shut it down at about 1 o'clock that morning. So
do you guys do driver rotations? Are they continuous 4-hour races, and you have stints? Or
It depends upon the race. I mean, obviously, the 3 national competitions, those are continuously 4-hour. Stout, they do 2 hours. They do a break when they serve lunch. Then they do another 2 hours. Midnight, is that all 4? That's continuously 4 hours.
It's continuously 4 hours, but with the 2 unofficial competitions, we usually try to cycle in drivers about every half hour, assuming we are racing and not stuck in the mud. But yeah, we usually try to cycle in drivers every 30 minutes, and then at our national competitions, we usually only have maybe 1 or 2 drivers, just because it's so competitive, and fuel stops are maybe a minute and a half, and we only have 3 fuel stops. So it's just trying to be competitive, and unfortunately that means not having multiple drivers, and knowing the track is also a huge benefit for keeping the same driver in there.
Yeah,
That's got to be a brutal stint.
Oh yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh.
It's really rough.
Have any of you guys done that?
Not for the
That
national
long stint?
competitions.
Okay.
Yeah. I think all of us. I mean, we've all driven the cars, but
At those exhibition type events.
yeah,
but,
at
okay.
the
Yep, I
regional
gotcha.
ones, but not. You did acceleration.
So yeah, after the unofficial competitions, we end up using those experimental designs, and we get to the actual competitions. And each of those, I guess, formal competitions are made up of static and dynamic events. So first off, we get there and they check our car, and we go through a little tech inspection, and they make sure our car meets all the rules and that we aren't cheating, essentially. And then we move to sales presentation, where we have to try to sell our car as to a bunch of investors and try to, I guess, give them reasons why they should buy our car, and similar to like Polaris if they were selling a Razor and such.
Yeah.
So this is you got to keep track of like the MSRP of all the parts that you get, whether you pay for them or they're donated.
And actually, that's one of the static events is the cost competition. So you do have to list all the parts of your car and the MSRP for those. And if they think you're lying about it, they will audit you. And
they'll call the manufacturer.
well, no, I think they look up parts and
They've got an idea of what it should cost.
Usually, what the audit includes is they'll have you bring your car and all your paperwork in. And they get a bunch of people out there on their phones, and they start looking at stuff. Well, if you say on your cost report you're running the real cheap GBC tires, and on your car you've actually got brand new Maxxis Razor tires on there. Well, then they're going to go ahead and they're going to deduct you, and they're going to charge you a whole bunch of extra money or whatever.
Charge
on
you a
your
penalty
report.
for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's basically they'll review everything to make sure. Let's see. I think we actually got audited for the first time this year while we were in New York, and I don't remember what. I think there was one thing on. Our laser time. So they looked at our sheet metal, and part of it was in there, and they said if you were cutting 525 inches of sheet metal or whatever, you can't cut it this fast. In our cost report, they say, you have to assume that laser time is, I don't even know what the number is. Let's say $25 an hour, whatever it is. And so we said that to cut all of our parts on a laser, it took like 32 minutes. And that's what we wrote down. Well, the guy looked at it and he said, oh, no, that's not right. It actually take like 48 minutes. Well,
So he's arguing with you over.
yeah.
12
Well,
minutes or something.
when we do that, we call quality manufacturing who cuts our parts, and we say, how fast can you cut this? And they say, we cut that at 200 inches a minute. So that part would only take like 28 minutes. But you can't really argue with those guys because
they're not checking that. So their kind of rule is law on that. If they decide you can't cut it
some
that
of
fast,
it is.
okay.
A lot of the manufacturing stuff is. Usually what they'll do is you're looking at 100 different teams, so you can kind of compare everything, and you can kind of see what should be right and what should be wrong.
Sure.
Actually, the other thing that I remember we got hit on was our engine. So Briggs & Stratton has the MSRP on their website for, it was like $389 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, in SAE's documentation, they say you have to write down this much. This is the number, and we were off by like $10.
But then they penalize you for that.
Absolutely.
That's not going to make or break my buying decision. If I was looking at buying one
Over
of these,
$10.
it's like, whatever.
I mean, and it's all about how many points each event is worth. So the cost event it's worth points, but it's not worth all of the points. So
Sure.
if you get penalized, it's not good, and you want to correct that, but it's not the end of the world if you messed up a number or something.
Sure.
Although, there have been some instances of teams cheating on cost
On the cost
report.
event. Because
Yeah.
it's probably an easy one to cheat on. I mean, really, if you wanted to cheat.
There's two different judgings on that. So there's a cost event where they judge your the worth of your car.
Well, there's a cost event, and then there's a cost report score. The cost event is how much your car kind of costs overall. How did it cost? $10,000? Did it cost $100,000 to build it? And that's kind of where they score you.
Yep.
But your cost report score is only how well you fill out the paperwork, and that's it.
That's super annoying.
Bureaucracy at its finest, right there.
Absolutely.
How good are you?
They
at,
catch a lot of people with that too.
I believe it.
just because they're disorganized.
Yeah, it's just all the paperwork is due all at once, and there's
You
a
gotta
lot of
turn it all
different things to
in
fill
and-
out. So
Yep.
if you're not paying attention to that, and you fill out, halfway, or you don't turn it in on time. It's
Well,
a
so if you
problem.
wanted to bend some stuff, what you do is if you say you fill out your report really, really poorly and you forget a lot of stuff, but that makes your car really cheap and you score really well in the cost event, but you just get a pretty bad score on the cost report.
Just got to even out,
bounces out
right?
there.
Yeah,
You gotta,
I mean,
you got to decide which one.
take a little bit of hit for a really big gain, or
Right.
do it that way. So
So yeah, we gone through. Well, that tech isn't really an event, but we gone through 2 events, those 2 cost events. What happens?
Let's talk about some dynamic
So I guess
events.
to kind of round up the static events is our design judging. So that's I guess one of the harder, the bigger events of the competition. So there's a bunch of judges from Polaris, Caterpillar, a few other big manufacturers that'll come in, listen to us talk about our car and the decisions that we made. Really, I guess, make sure we're doing our schoolwork and saying, oh, this will survive, and proving why it survives.
Do they have a list of questions that they are going to ask you ahead of time, or do you have a format you have to follow for that presentation?
Usually it's what a lot of teams do is they have examples of their calculations or their failed parts or whatever that they bring with them, and then they have judges that specialize in chassis and ergonomics, or just suspension braking, and whatever it was this year, and steering
Yeah,
or
they
something.
just throw a lot of things on one
Yeah.
judge if they
So-
don't have enough.
So they have in your grouping, since they have like 6 cars that do design judging at a time in this big tent, in your group they have a judge that specializes in each of the subsystems of the car, and if you're the one who led the design process for that subsystem, you go and talk to them for the entire 10 minutes?
15 minutes.
Yeah. So you go and talk to them about what you designed for the entire 10 minutes.
Gotcha.
And you try and pitch your design to them. And there's all different types of judges. Some will interrogate you and ask these really, really hard questions. Some of them will just stand there and you're just trying to come up with stuff to talk
Right,
about.
they're just staring at you
Yep.
to see
Yeah.
if you'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
Who's going to be silent first?
And
How much bullcrap can you make up in 10 minutes, really?
And then the nice part about some of those judges, a lot of them are alumni,
Mm-hmm.
so they've been through this and they know what to grill us on, and
They know what buttons to push.
Yeah.
yeah, they really know when we're struggling or when we know what we're talking about, and
Sure.
it really shows.
So are these presentations like with just pictures, or is the car like right in front of you that you can point to
So
this and say this is what we did?
So it's usually about 15 of our teammates that'll end up surrounding the car. We get our little booth that we get to sit in. We usually bring a few posters, a few failed parts, and we just kind of surround the car, walk around the car, and show the judges. We can point to the car, we can pick up pieces, point to our posters. We usually carry a notebook with us with our calcs to really, I guess, show them that we've done our work.
So you do that for 10 minutes, and then do they just write their score? You don't see it, or how does it go from there?
they'll go back without anybody from the team, and they'll kind of deliberate a little bit and talk a little bit and write all their stuff down. And then after they've went through and kind of judged everybody, then they'll round everybody up and they'll kind of place every team in a ranking of who they think who did the best and who didn't.
Is
and
this
whatnot.
overall design, or are they doing it by component again?
Overall.
Overall, okay.
So once they meet that first time, right after you're done, each person will write down on a list and give you however many points out of whatever your total is for that system. And then they'll just put it all together and then give you a total.
Do you get that list of what your scoring was per component?
Yep.
Then
You
again?
usually
Okay.
get that the following day. And you can also go up and ask questions to that design judge. It's not always the exact same person. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And
It's usually the person managing that area at the time.
Yeah.
So
So
they'll
at least
remember you, but they won't know exactly why.
At least you can try to get some feedback on why you may have gotten docked points. Then.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's one of the big things. If you want one of your design leads to do well in a design presentation, you put them in there the year before. You let them see it, you let them kind of understand it, and then you have them go and talk to the judge and talk directly to them. Here's exactly why I gave you that score. Here's what you can do better. Here's what I really liked and what I didn't like. And then you take that to next year, and you just absolutely kill it.
So that's it for static events then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Then where do you go from there? What's the first driving event?
Next day is dynamic events, all the real fun stuff.
Does it take the whole day? Is it 2 days?
Yeah,
How's that work?
So our whole competition is set up in four days.
Yeah, it's a 4-day competition.
First day is all registration.
Yep, registration, engine check, and sales presentation.
Gotcha.
Day 2 is tech inspection and design presentation, and then brake check, just to make sure you're not going to run over people.
Yep.
And then
It's an important day that day.
Yeah, it is
That's-
an important
that's the
day.
big one.
There's a lot of people that fail.
It's a make and break.
It's
Yeah.
like safety day.
Well, the
I
real
remember-
interesting part is there are a lot of we get a lot of foreign teams, and there are quite a few foreign teams that will, pack their whole car up, all their tools and everything in a crate. They'll ship it out to the site. They'll fly their whole team over, and they'll get here, and they can't pass brake check.
Wow.
Come on,
It's
guys.
disappointing. Well, I mean,
They're Italian, aren't they?
It's not on fire, Adam. He said it's the brakes.
Ah, my bad.
although there are a lot of cars that do catch on fire sometimes. I mean, I can see where it'd be tough as a team coming over from another country, and the only way you can get your car here is by packing it in a box 4 weeks ahead of time, and then you get here a week ahead of time, and you have to reassemble your entire car using whatever tools that you have.
Oh, sure.
There's
Yes.
there's a little different standards over there too.
Yeah.
So in Gorman this year, our hill climb was about 150.
Well, I mean, it was the
total-
course itself is 150 feet. The hill itself was like 200.
Yeah, actual distance up the hill was about 250 feet, and it was at
35%?
I'd say it was probably close to a 40-degree angle, real loose dirt. They watered it down.
And the top
But-
of it was sand, right
Yeah.
at the top of the hill. It was
And-
just a sand pit.
But the part where the whole standards things comes in was over in India, Baja SAE India competition last year. Their hill climb was a 20-degree angle on serrated concrete, like a boat ramp that's been cut
Yeah.
horizontally at a 20-degree angle, and it was 50 foot long. And there were teams that couldn't make that. So it's just they've just got different levels, and apparently we're just quite a bit
More challenging.
harder, yeah,
And
more
hardcore.
challenging.
And I mean,
We
it's
like that.
The United States Baja Series is thought of as the best,
the most
series.
difficult, or the-
and it's the oldest one, obviously. So that's where a lot of that comes from. A lot of these other international series, what they're missing is just a lot of the time to develop it.
Right, because you said, what iteration of car is this one? Did you say 38 or something like that?
Yeah, Baja's been around at Iowa State,
Like 82 or 83.
and I mean we've skipped a few years
Sure.
in there, but yeah, this is pretty close to the 30. I can't do math right now. It's like 35 or so years.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of cars.
Yeah.
That's a lot of engineering to draw on, even if, over the course of that time, a lot of what happened the first few years maybe has been engineered away because you've made improvements, but you've still made improvements on an original design, right? Whereas, those teams, maybe they've been doing it a couple years, maybe they've been doing it 5 years, they just don't have, they're trying to build up that backlog of information that they can build and improve upon. So,
And I think starting a Baja team now is so much more difficult than it used to be because there are just so many good teams. So you're just looking at what the good teams do, and you're not actually doing a lot of the engineering behind it. So trying to copy somebody is really difficult to get the same performance. And I think that's what a lot of newer teams run into, is they just have a hard time getting an original idea anymore.
So, go through the events then. I mean, how does that event day run? Where do you guys start?
So there's going to be some sort of traction event. It's either going to be a hill climb, or it's going to be like a sled pull, something like that.
Like a tractor pull.
Yeah, it's in. Let's see.
Tennessee, they had sled
Tennessee.
pull.
It was a scale tractor pull sled. They hook you up on 6 foot of chain. They've got a moving weight and everything, and see how far you can drag it. And if you can drag it the whole distance, then it's all based on time and photo gates and stuff like that. So there's usually a traction event. There's always going to be an acceleration run, which is either going to be 100 or 150 feet. Get down the track as fast as you can. It's pretty straightforward. There's going to be some sort of there's usually a suspension event. Mm-hmm. So that's usually the most grueling that we'll see.
What do they do with that? What are you?
It's
how do you
it's
test
basically
that?
taking all the most extreme terrain that you can get on a Baja course and compressing it into a minute-long run, essentially. So there's a lot of off-camber corners, a lot of tall drops, bigger trees to run over.
Anything that will get you stuck.
Yep.
They'll try and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So on those, you'll see pretty sharp corners. You'll see corners that have either jumps or dips in them. So if you don't take the corner correctly, you'll either get stuck or it'll throw you off to the side. One of the real hard ones is they have what's called a pinwheel, which is it's usually a hairpin corner that they stack with logs kind of into a pinwheel. So what happens is as you start going over that, you start bouncing and you start sliding out. So in these events, if you go out of bounds, you're disqualified. So you really got to be careful.
And then it's a time course then.
Yep.
So then you're judged on time.
It's timed, or if it's a really difficult course, they'll do it on distance, how far you made it.
And actually, there's quite a few teams that don't make it through.
Yeah.
I don't know what the S&T course at Tennessee was, but I think like 60%.
Yeah, S&T,
I thought it was more than that.
Yeah, S&T in Tennessee was pretty bad. I remember Alabama the year before was really difficult. There was a lot of teams that got stuck on the same obstacle. They had in Alabama I think it was 4x4 posts that they put vertically in the ground. So it was basically like a big garden of these. They were about 2 foot apart, and they stuck out of the ground anywhere from 6 inches to like 2 foot. And they just went up and down and varied, so you had to be careful about picking your path. And A-arm breakers. You got to either hit it with your tire or don't hit it at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a test of the driver almost as much as the car at that point. And it's all about making quick decisions, because even if they do have a course walk, and even if you walk the course, you don't know what it's going to be like until you drive it.
And then the last event is going to be a maneuverability event. Usually it's set up all with cones, tennis balls on cones. So you're going to see hairpins, slaloms, stuff like that. When we were in Tennessee, they had some stuff that was kind of on hills where you'd kind of drive around the side of a hill. They had a slalom, except the center of the slalom course was raised about 1.5 feet up. So you'd kind of have to lean side to side and go through it that way. In California, it was all just real loose dirt and stuff like that.
And each track does it differently. I mean, every time they organize a maneuverability course, they score it a little bit differently. And anymore now, they're up to cones and tennis balls. And if you knock a tennis ball off, you lose.
Yeah, tennis ball is going to be like a 2-second penalty, and the whole cone's going to be like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And it's all just based on time.
So after all these, I guess, grueling events, they expect us to come back the next day and do a 4-hour race. So you'll see a lot of teams in the pits overnight just grinding and welding, and usually the whole night is just filled with generators going all night.
Yeah, that's all you can hear. Just 100 trailers with everyone has a generator running. And
So what event do you guys tend to do well at?
In the past few years, it's been definitely endurance.
Okay.
We got first in endurance 2 years ago. We got first in endurance twice
Out of the three
three
nice.
competitions, which is it's really rare.
It was a pretty big upset.
At least for us it is.
Yeah.
We got first in endurance once this year, and at Tennessee. Made a little bit of a mistake though.
The other two races.
In our final tech inspection after the race at Tennessee, they found that one of the CVT weights was not the same as all the others. So it was a different weight.
At the beginning of the event, we're required to write down the specific weights, and if they're out of spec, then you've changed something, and that's what they call cheating.
Yeah. And actually, it it was detrimental to us, but it still wasn't within the rules. So we received a points penalty for it. Did we actually get the placement for winning endurance race, or did we? Okay,
Yeah.
so we actually.
You still won then?
Yeah, they told us that we won the endurance race, and on the record we did, but we received a penalty that pretty much took it away.
Oh, so you didn't get it then after the penalty?
Yeah,
Well,
so for the points...
we officially won the endurance, but when they scored us overall for the competition, they assessed a penalty. So
Gotcha.
while we were first in endurance, we ended up like 12th, or no, we were way lower than that,
What?
weren't we?
Overall? No, we...
Overall, we got 6, but we would have placed.
Yeah, 6th overall in
Yeah.
Tennessee, and we kind of figured out the points if they didn't penalize us, and it would have been about 3rd.
Sounds like a decent point penalty then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
Pretty
is.
serious
absolutely.
penalty. You know,
Or
over a weight.
Are they usually pretty close, like from team to team? I mean, is it pretty tight, or is there someone that runs away with it?
It's pretty evenly distributed through, from like 300 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So the total number of points is 1,000.
Yeah, usually the top 10 are going to be really close. So to get top 20, we say you usually got to have a pretty good car. Top 10, you got to absolutely know what you're doing. And then to get top 3, you got to be lucky. And that's it.
Yeah,
I
because
think
there's...
a lot of racing in general is luck.
Yeah,
Let's face it.
absolutely.
And I mean, there are really good teams that consistently do well, but they don't always get top 3 either. So there's a lot
They'll
of...
place in the top 10 consistently, though.
They'll consistently place in the top 10, but they won't always consistently place in the top 3. It depends upon the year and if they're having a good one or not. So
The nice thing about our program is we've been consistently placing in the top 10.
yeah, this year we placed 6th in Tennessee, 9th in California, and then 6th in Rochester. So it's staying in the top. That's the first time we've ever done it as a team.
Well done.
So
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it should be.
It'll be something to try to improve on next year.
Yeah, it's definitely daunting to start from that. And,
Right.
And it's such a variable thing from year to year. So it's pretty intimidating to come back and say, well, how can we do better than that?
Try to maintain all the stuff we've learned and help teach younger members at the same time.
So who's coming back next year then?
All 3 of us.
You're all going to be here
Yep.
next year. Okay.
So we're all holding pretty high leadership positions on the
Nice.
team. And we've kept...
for better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse. The group that are all juniors or seniors right now, they've all pretty much stayed on the team since they were freshmen. So
Okay.
we have a very strong upperclassmen group that can really help everybody else out.
Yeah, I know personally, when I was a freshman, I just kind of walked, I saw the shop, I saw them at Club Fest, and they said, hey, stop by the shop on Saturday, and walked in, been here ever since, just started out, grinding stuff, coping some tubes, and now I'm helping design a lot of the suspension and drivetrain later this year, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any type of recruiting problem?
It depends.
Yes.
We have a hard time retaining people. We have
Oh,
no
really?
problem getting a lot of people to show up for the first 3 meetings.
Yep.
And then after that, it just drops
Yeah.
exponentially. And
Yeah.
by the end of the year, you have just the people who actually have a title on the team staying around.
It's really hard with the schedule that we run because here we do all of our racing, late spring, early summer, and then everybody gets back to the shop right around August in that area. And we start saying, okay, we're going to start trying to hammer out all this design work and stuff. And you got all these people coming in that, not necessarily aren't cut out for design work, but just haven't been around long enough to really know what's going on. And there's really not a whole lot for them to do. We do have the competitions in the fall that we go to that we try and hang around and get prepped for. So, but we already got the car built and stuff, so it's just really hard to keep people busy.
Sure.
Makes sense.
It's really delegating tasks is the most difficult problem that we run into from a management standpoint. It's really frustrating to have people not show up again and,
Sure.
and not come back. But I totally understand where they're coming from. It
Right.
sucks to not have a place or not have something to do all the time.
Yeah, and it's a club. You're not their boss, so what are you going to do?
Yeah,
about it?
we can't make them show up or anything, but
Right.
it's all volunteer, and if you don't show up, you're gonna hurt the team, I guess, if you've been involved.
But if you're not dedicated, what do you care?
It's hard to be invested in something that you don't have a purpose for.
Yeah, and if you look at all the people that are here, really, the people that are still here are the people that showed up, didn't have anything to do, went home, and then showed up again. It's all the people that hung around even though there wasn't anything to do.
Right.
It's basically people that wanted to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the people that we have, especially from last year, they came in, didn't have anything to do, they left, showed up the next week, then there was something to do. Well, then you start, and if you're there all the time, well, eventually there's going to be a lot of stuff that you can do. So
right, and it's a matter of experience too. So like you were saying, you were grinding for a while, and that's all you can do. But you're there doing it. You're learning more about the car while you're there, and maybe somebody will show you something that you can maybe you can work on next year, maybe you work on next week. But you got to be there to make it count and actually be able to be part of the team. So,
and I guess some of it's social. A lot of us have been getting together. We'll end up watching a movie, drinking a few beers together, and just having a good time outside of Baja. And I think that's a huge important part, is that a lot of us are just friends here. I mean, we're doing this for fun.
We try to be friends most of the time.
I mean, there may be a few wrenches thrown around the shop at each other, but it's all in good fun.
Yeah. Nobody actually gets hurt.
Right. It's just thrown in their general direction and to make a point.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
So I got one final question.
Okay.
What happens to the car when you guys are done with it? Like, do you guys get the opportunity to purchase them from the school? Do they get destroyed? What happens to them?
So I don't even know if we can go on record as saying this, because I'm not sure if we'd ever get in trouble for doing it. But what usually happens is the car will run its season. We'll hang on to it. We'll keep it up and going, and we'll race it again that fall at the non-sanctioned competitions. You just have fun with it. But keeping around a running car is really good for anybody doing design work, because it's a good test bed for prototypes. So if you got some kind of super weird, prototype suspension you want to try, well, we already got a car that's got all of its drivetrain, all of its steering, all the shocks and everything already together, and all you got to do is put that one part on and try it out. So we usually keep them around for technically 2 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Once it's 2 seasons. So we'll race it, then we'll race it in the fall, and then we'll when spring comes around, we'll usually go ahead and get rid of the 2-year-old one, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. And lately they've actually had all their parts on them, or most of the parts. So it used to be that the just get rid of a frame, so we'd take all the expensive stuff off of it and there wouldn't be anything left. But now we have a pretty much a complete car that we can get rid of.
And when we say get rid of, they actually go to whoever did the most work on that vehicle that year, almost always the tech director. So after they've had their long run on the team and we've got another car to replace it, we'll get it somewhat put together and running, and then we'll pass it off to that person, and they can do with it what they will.
Mm-hmm. And it's implied that it is paid for. I mean, it's paid for with the time that they've dedicated to the team, and also most make a donation to the team upon receiving the car. So
Sure.
Makes sense.
It's not just for free.
Of course.
I'll make that very clear. But there's actually reciprocation.
Right.
For it.
It's cool that it doesn't just end up in a scrapyard, at least.
Yeah, we don't want to see them end up in a scrapyard
Yeah,
because
it's a
we
lot of
spent
work
all of
just
our
to
time on it,
throw
and
away.
it's hard to let go of your baby after a full year. Of
Right, you
working
spent
on
a whole year working on this
Although
car.
you end up kind of hating it at the end. It's
What's
just-
we can relate to that.
Especially Robbie.
Just light a match, walk away.
What's really cool is, or at least we're going to try and start this, and I'm sure we say this every year, but every year while we're building it, we always talk about, man, it'd be really cool to try this, but it's outside the rules, so we can't. Well, if any of these guys would stick around that get these cars, then it's just kind of a free will to do whatever you want. We've got one that we're looking at right now from, I guess it would be 2 seasons ago. We're looking at maybe hopping up one of those 10 horsepower Briggses and seeing what it'll do.
Yeah, because we are switching to technically a new engine next year, so all of our current engines are obsolete. So we have extra stuff that we can
Do stupid things with.
Yeah, do stupid things with. So
Take a motor we run at 3,800 RPM and see if we can get it to turn 6.
Machine the head down and see if you can up the compression. Or...
Well, so far we've decked about 50 thou out of the head that's already on there. We could probably do 60 to 70 if we pocket the valves.
That's it.
That's about where it's at right now. Lighten up the flywheel a lot, but all those engines and a lot of those Briggs engines, there's a big cult following for karting. So guys build a whole bunch of billet blocks and all these racing flywheels and all this. So there's potential in those motors to make about 20 horse at 6,000 RPM.
That's a completely different animal.
Yeah, that's
than what we just
I know
drove.
from experience, they shake themselves apart at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you get one of those flywheels to fall apart at $6,000, it's a hand grenade.
Yeah, you're gonna need maybe some more material between you and the engine.
Just a little bit.
What else you got, Robbie? You got anything?
my only question would be: is Baja your only like racing outlet, or like you guys car guys? Like what?
I'm a bus guy. I co-own a 1990 turbo diesel school bus with Andy and my brother, who is also on the Baja team.
Why?
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, it seemed like a good idea
Like
at the
a
time.
party
Like
bus?
I
It's
assume this
to
is
turn into a motorhome, actually.
So I assume this is a tailgating.
Yeah,
rig.
so
It's
tailgating
nice.
and camping.
It's gonna be like a one fits everything, and
Yeah.
we've
road
really
trip
kind of done a lot of work on the inside, making it look good, and I think we're throwing a bunch of bunks in it, a little kitchen, and it'll end up being here for ISU tailgating, of course.
I'm going to look into making a entertainment center out of a Raspberry Pi and a few other components.
Maybe a fold-down
nice.
beer pong table or two.
Yeah,
Who
you know,
knows?
Of course.
Kegerator.
The essentials.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
The
essential.
bare minimum.
But yeah, I mean, I'm past that. I don't seem to have much time to do anything with cars outside of schoolwork and Baja, so that's my extent of it.
Who would have thought building one race car would take up enough time to where you don't have enough time to build another race car?
So, Andy, do you have anything else, or just the co-ownership of the bus?
No, just the co-ownership of the bus. It'd be really nice to get into racing, but I don't think any of us can afford it just with the whole Baja and college thing.
What's it? What kind of bus is this?
Just a regular
Yeah, you're
90 school bus.
Yeah,
Is it
country
a
route school?
Oh,
bus.
like an international or
It's a Ford.
Ford? Okay.
Yeah,
It's not a
1994.
cab over. Everybody always asks.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not a cab over, but it does the job, and it should be fun when we take it cross country.
Yeah.
Maybe do some donuts in the ice. We'll see.
There you go.
Oh God, that would be the best thing ever.
Make sure you put it on YouTube.
Always.
You'll make at least $1 off of it for sure.
Ryan?
I do a little bit of dirt bike riding. I've got a KTM 300 EXC right now. That's more of a mechanic project than it is a riding project, but we're working on it. So,
Have you ever done any competitions with dirt biking, or just this is just
no,
a hobby?
No, I haven't. It's
Okay.
just for fun. Just an easy way to hurt myself when I
Right.
can't do it at Baja. So,
Absolutely. Robbie and I have both crashed motorcycles.
Right there.
I have
Yeah.
too, but it was a much smaller one.
Yeah, we did it on the road, unfortunately.
Yeah. 60 to 0 is not.
ooh,
Yeah, he was going twice as fast as I was when I crashed mine. What were you riding when you did that?
Buell 1120R.
Yeah.
1125R.
Not a slow bike either.
No.
I was taking a corner going 60, and I didn't really follow the line with my eyes, and I was looking off into the distance and ended up in the ditch head first. 60 to 0, landed on my head. Luckily, I had a helmet on. Dented the crap out of the inside of the helmet. And then I dented the shit out of it when I threw it on the ground out of frustration.
All the adrenaline and frustration all at the
Yep,
same time.
and,
well, they say you're supposed to replace those after you use them, right?
oh yeah, yeah. It was done. Yeah. Then I drove home all shaky armed and upset at myself, and of course it wasn't my bike, which made it even worse.
You didn't
but-
break any. Well, you didn't break any body parts.
I scuffed it up. It was nothing that was.
No, I mean your body parts.
Oh, I'll talk about the bike.
That was scuffed up too, if I remember right.
Yeah. No, I just had. I think I had a concussion.
Just walk it off. It's not a
was-
big deal.
Some
One of, like,
some
5 or
headaches later
6.
So was this racing, or is this on the
on. No,
street?
just driving on the street.
Oh, okay.
Weren't you in
Just
some
cruising with
canyon
his,
or something?
Cruising with his dad and his brother
Yeah, I was just
Weren't
driving.
you canyon carving or something?
in Iowa.
No, you weren't
it
in
was like,
Iowa.
It was like in Newton Hills area.
Oh, you were in Iowa.
Yep.
I thought you were on the coast. Never mind.
no.
Yeah, we've got a couple other guys that ride too. One of the guys that I ride with is about the same, but we've got another one. The guy who actually built our shocks, does he race anymore? Or?
I don't think he races anymore, but he... our shot guy, his name's Preston, he used to race ATVs for track courses. I think he rode a 450R for the longest time, and I think he's starting to get into dirt biking. He has a 125 two-stroke that he's starting out with, but I think he does that on the side now. He works at Blattner Energy, so he's driving all over the place.
Yeah.
He's a lot more serious about that than anybody else I've ever met, though. Wasn't he president of the motocross club?
Yeah,
or?
he was president of the motocross club here at Iowa State. They usually have 14 or 15 members. They borrow our trailer and went down to Texas usually every year, and they'll spend 2 weeks there just racing and hurting themselves.
Fun.
Does the guy actually
Lots of
make
hurting.
it to class, being in two clubs? And
Yeah, that's the tough part for a lot of us.
He's really smart.
Yeah,
Like,
let's just say
really
that.
smart.
he can get away with doing less studying, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of us are usually in multiple clubs. Like myself, I do 5 days a week of practice for martial arts, and then I come in and do Baja and try to maintain classwork at the same time. Sometimes it doesn't go as well, sometimes it does. But it's all in good fun.
I got to ask, what martial arts?
So I practice judo.
Okay,
Okay. I knew some of those guys. I was in the Muay Thai club for a while.
Neat.
that's cool. That's a good hobby too.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a MMA podcast though, so we won't go there.
Sometimes my
That's
body
our
doesn't
next
agree with
one.
me.
Right, joints. Me and your joints. But you got anything else?
I think that's it.
This has been good.
Anybody or any sponsors or anything you guys want to shout out or anything like that before we wrap this up?
So, obviously, Quality Manufacturing, huge shout out to them. They do an amazing job with us. VR3 Engineering for putting up with our crap and
Well, you
helping
can't
us
really
out.
shout out to them because we pay them a lot of money for what they
Oh,
do.
that's one of those where they don't give you this stuff.
They help us out quite a bit with programming costs and stuff, but quality's like, oh yeah, send us what you want, and we'll just make it for you, and you can come pick it up whenever you want.
Yeah, I've always thought Quality Manufacturing was a super cool company because I've interviewed with them. I guess I technically didn't tour it because they don't let anybody behind the scenes, but I know they make like stuff for John Deere. They made a roller coaster for something in Florida. Like it's just unique stuff.
They were putting together an installation art project in one of their shops when we visited. So, I mean, they do everything.
Huh.
I've never even heard of this place.
It's really impressive.
Yep.
And a few other like competition sponsors, like Briggs and Stratton, they do so much for the competition. And Vermeer is a huge sponsor for us. They really help us out with our cash problem that we always seem to have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are there any other cash sponsors? Any big ones? I mean, obviously you guys are getting donations, I'm sure, but
Should have just looked at the back end of the car.
we got some pictures of the car. We'll
Yep,
post those
those are
I
online.
know Caterpillar helps us out a decent
Yeah,
amount.
Caterpillar's is always really generous. We have a lot of Baja alumni and Iowa State alumni that work at Caterpillar.
Oh, yeah, I'm
that
sure.
They come back during the career fair and they visit us all the time. They're really nice about it.
That's cool.
But, yeah, just a lot of small companies in Iowa. And every little bit helps chip in.
What about social media? You guys got social media?
Yeah, we have like 1,400 likes on Facebook now.
I'm pretty sure we got 1,600.
1,600?
I'm pretty sure we ended up with about. I know we beat the Formula team. That's the important.
There we go.
That's a nice dig.
Oh, yeah.
That's the important part.
That was-
I know we beat them.
that was the next question.
Even
Let's-
though they get a couple extra likes because their name is just Cyclone Racing, I'm pretty sure we beat them.
Oh, yeah, we're at 1,630.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Let's see if
1630,
your
look at that.
downloads for this episode is
Oh,
better
yeah,
than
so
theirs.
Adam had a gauntlet that he wanted to throw down. You might as well just
I was
pitch
going to
it.
do that later, but that's all right. You're going to
doing
put me
it now.
on.
Just pitch it. Just pitch it out there.
All right. So we have analytics for all of our stuff. I was going to get you guys their first week's download numbers and see if you can beat it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
So-
man.
I don't care if you just put it on repeat. Whatever you got to do.
Or tell people.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Share it. Show it around.
Yeah,
We'll take that challenge.
Our biggest challenge is getting our name out there because obviously if we advertise ourselves even to the university, people will take notice and it will come back to help us in the end.
Sure.
A big thing that it's helping us with right now is we're moving to a new building sometime this fall. So they're going to be tearing down nuclear engineering and building a student innovation center. So we're moving in with all 4 SAE teams. So that'd be Formula, Super Mileage, Clean Snowmobile, Baja, and then Cyclone Space Mining, which used to be Lunabotics, and Prism, which is the solar car.
Yep.
plus one or two more clubs, I think. So we're all going to be crammed in one building. So our presence in the university is helping us out a lot to get what we need to be
for
an effective
the
team.
new space.
Yeah.
And just to make sure it was said, if you just search Iowa State Baja on Facebook, you'll definitely be able to find us. We usually try to post, videos once a month, if not more.
Yeah, we're pretty prolific with it.
And it's really, we've really been improving our presence there, and it's really shown with our increase and our standing with the university. We've really been increasing, and I think we've been kind of shown around to the engineering professors. A lot of them will just come up to us and say hi and stop in whenever they have some spare time.
We visit some local high schools too and talk about engineering and STEM education and what we do and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun to go and evangelize Baja a little bit and talk to people.
Try to get people to come to you guys first as opposed to the other teams.
And just be interested in racing in general, because it's a fun thing to do, and it's not something that everybody gets the opportunity to.
Yeah, no. One of the last things you think when you come here to college to be an engineer or whatever is, I could be on a racing team. Like that's a thing. I can sit here and build race cars and then just go racing instead of going to class. Not that we do that.
Not that you've ever done
all,
that.
but
You go to all of your classes.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just like the athletes.
Yep. I don't have anything else.
No,
Let's call it good. Find us at 1010s Podcast on Facebook and Instagram and Car Throttle, as well as at the number 1010s Podcast on Twitter and 1010spodcast.com.
Leave us a rating, write a review on iTunes.
Tell us how much you love the Baja episode on iTunes with 5 stars.
And I'll make sure to share you guys on our Facebook page so all of our fans can find you too.
Yep.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks a lot, guys. Catch you guys next week.